Hello, everyone. I'm Winnie Lam. Thank you so much for attending this talk about oceans. We have two esteemed scientists here with us from the Wildlife Conservation Society who's going to tell us about our oceans. We've got Claudio Campagna, Dr. Claudio Campagna, and Dr. Caleb McClennen, both from the Wildlife Conservation Society. Dr. Claudio Campagna is the leading scientist of the Wildlife Conservation Society's Patagonia Sea program. He specializes in the biology and conservation of marine mammals. In addition to having published 5 books and 60 scientific papers, he's also been the scientific advisor for the BBC and the National Geographic Channel. He's going to talk to us about our oceans. And Dr. Caleb McClennen is the Marine Conservation Director at the Wildlife Conservation Society. He works on improving our fisheries management globally so that we can conserve marine biodiversity worldwide. And for those of you who are here to hear about the trip to Belize, he's going to talk to us about that. So without further ado, let's give a very warm welcome to our guests, Dr. Claudio Campagna and Dr. Caleb McClennen.
Thank you, Winnie, and thanks everyone for taking some time out of your busy day to be here with us. So as Winnie mentioned, we're going to go through a bit of some of the most fascinating places in the world's oceans today, some of the challenges we face, and then some stories of hope that where we're working, a number of people are working to make a significant difference in improving the health of the oceans. And we want to focus specifically on the Patagonia Sea, a place where Claudio has spent close to 30 years of his life working to help save, and had remarkable progress. I think really inspiration to all of us that we can make a big difference out there. And then finally, I'll close with just a short summary of this opportunity that we have to host some volunteers at our Glover Reef Research Station in Belize, and provide you a bit more details about that opportunity, and then we'll have some time for questions. So thank you all, and it's really a pleasure to be here at Google. So when we think about the oceans and what drew you here, or what inspires people to think about caring about our seas, everyone has some sort of image like this in their heads. For me, this is diving actually at Glover's Reef in Belize, where these 2 different species, a bottlenose and a beaked dolphin, swam side by side next to me, and just blow your mind away in terms of taking you away from humanity and bringing you into the sea. So all of you probably, from some part of your life, have your own image like this, where you've connected individually on a personal level with some species in the sea. And if you haven't, it will happen, and it will really be fantastic. So there's these moments that are inspirational. There's also vast ocean ecosystems that have tremendous biodiversity. This is from Bunaken Reserve in the heart of the Coral Triangle, where you have over 600 species of coral reef, 3,000 species of reef fish. For people who have been there and seen it, it's like no other place on the planet. It's the center center of origin for marine biodiversity on the planet, a place that is beyond comparison. And this is in the center of Indonesia in the Indo-Pacific Coral Triangle. So the oceans have this fantastic biodiversity, this fantastic wildlife, these incredibly important ecosystems. But as we know, the oceans are also critically important for the livelihoods of tens of millions of people around the world. They provide critical seafood for over 1 billion people on the planet. 90% of fishermen live on the planet are depending on oceans in small-scale aspects like these. These are 2 fishermen off the coast of Madagascar, living on $1 or $2 a day. 100% of their protein for their families is coming from the sea. So the sea is not just some fantastic aspect of biodiversity for us to go to vacation to and see, but is an elemental part of coastal livelihoods throughout the world. And this is really an important essence of the oceans to also remember. So when on the other side of fishing from the sea, there's also, as we know, and probably people have heard far too much about, the overfishing crisis we face on the planet. We have trawlers trawling in very close to the shoreline in places that have almost no rules, taking in bycatch of marine turtles and dolphins, and over harvesting too many species. without any sort of regulations. We are now importing far more seafood from the developing world than we produce in the developed world. We are inadequately managing our fisheries and taking them from places where we have no idea what the population structure, how much fish we can possibly take out the ocean. So it is a significant challenge that is the industrial scale fisheries that are increasingly moving into resource poor and governance poor places. An articulation of this is the crisis we face with shark finning and shark fisheries today. We woke up to the whales in the early part of last century, and we started an international commitment to saving the great whales on this planet. As a result, around the world, whale populations are rebounding. In the 1970s, we woke up to sea turtles, and as a result, many sea turtle populations around the planet are rebounding. Today, we're waking up to the shark finning crisis. WCS research that we had done in the last decade indicates that between 40 and 70 million sharks are taken a year from our oceans. Almost none of these shark populations are assessed. Almost none of these fisheries are under control. This is the species crisis in the oceans of our day. As was articulated 2 summers ago, oil and gas extraction has moved into the Gulf of Mexico and is now moving offshore to a number of countries around the world. This is a National Geographic map of oil infrastructure in the Gulf moving out to about 150 miles. This is physical infrastructure in the ocean. When you look out in the ocean off the coast of California, you see almost none of this physical infrastructure because there's a moratorium on oil drilling. The Gulf of Mexico is a very different story, and the waters, a lot of countries around the world, is a very different story in terms of oil exploration. This is changing the way we think about the oceans. We're thinking about it as a space to be used and a space to be managed in a way that we only thought of possible on land before. In some places, the rule of law for the oceans is also incredibly challenging, such that people are using dynamite still to fish or to collect coastal aggregate materials for construction. It's a photo I took in the Marshall Islands, where I lived for 4 years working for their government, where they're still using reef resources for mining materials because there is no other resources for construction materials. So the physical use of nearshore reefs is another significant challenge we face. And then finally, as we all have heard from many different angles, but we cannot mention the oceans without describing the situation of climate change and its impact in the oceans. This is a reef in Aceh in Indonesia a year and a half ago, prior to a bleaching event that bleached out 100% of certain species of corals in a site where we work. And so the white is what happens to corals when all of their symbiotic algae is expelled. And if the temperatures do not decrease after a few weeks, the corals die, and that's what has happened in Indonesia and happened in a lot of places around the world when temperatures are elevated. So like many ecosystems, the global impact of climate change is also a considerable challenge. This all being said, there is significant hope in the oceans like there has not been before. There is a changing mindset in people and in countries around the world to try to find a way to better protect, better manage your fisheries, expand protected areas out into the oceans, ensure smart growth as opposed to unregulated growth of extractive industries, and invest significantly more in scientific research and understanding of the vast waters of our planet. We've invested a lot of money and time in understanding domestic waters of the US, and now a lot of that is changing to expand throughout the world. Just to point you out a bit of where we focus is that there's 3 centers of marine biodiversity in the planet. Basically the western edge of ocean basins. So the western edge of the Atlantic is the Caribbean, western edge of the Indian, the Western Indian Ocean, and the western edge of the Pacific Ocean. These are the hearts of marine biodiversity. Areas that are generally very nutrient poor, but have vast coral reef resources. So these places are, in a planet that is covered 72% by ocean, some of the most critical places to work to expand and protected areas and improving fisheries. There are also some places, again, along the coast where the greatest amount of productivity is happening on the oceans. Over 90% of marine life is existing in this coastal zone, and you have huge aggregations of coastal wildlife. The Congo Basin coast in Central Africa has the world's largest population of leatherback sea turtles. For folks that have seen leatherbacks, you're talking 9 feet long, these creatures that are extremely vulnerable. The largest population on the planet lives here and is doing very well. The Bay of Bengal has the world's largest population of Irrawaddy river dolphins and coastal cetaceans that the government of Bangladesh, one of the poorest countries on the planet, just put in a protected area to protect a whole slew of a population of river dolphins that's bigger by a factor of 10 than any other population on the planet. And in the Arctic, between Alaska and Russia, which is experiencing incredible impacts from climate change and receding ice, there's an effort to continue to protect walrus populations, ice seals to manage through this change, and the indigenous communities that actually depend on these resources to survive. And then finally, in the Patagonian Coast, where Claudio and a number of the people that work for him and partner with him are protecting the largest continental populations of southern elephant seals, penguins, albatross, in a way, in protecting them and restoring that abundance in a way that is unprecedented around the planet. So there's incredible hope and incredible demonstrated success of places where we're improving the health of the oceans and saving a number of species and ecosystems. I'm just going to close with a few slides, just some narrow slices of anecdotes that I think are quite interesting. These are several of our Indonesian staff working together with some fishermen in Indonesia that previously had used cyanide to fish for the live reef fish trade, to take reef fish out and bring them to restaurants still living like we do with lobster. It's just a delicacy in East Asia. We work with them to halt the cyanide fishing in exchange to pilot some aquaculture programs where they can more sustainably produce what the market is demanding. And as a result, they've started managing their fisheries better. There's no more cyanide on the reef, and the biodiversity and the number of fish is coming back out. And they're economically doing better than they were doing when they were using cyanide on the reef. So a win-win economically for these fishers who are living on very few amounts of dollars per day, and also for the marine resource. Critical in a place like Indonesia, where you have over 200 million people living in an island country that is extremely small. This is a photo from Belize. These are Nassau grouper, which are critically threatened throughout the Caribbean. Most of the spawning aggregations of Nassau grouper have gone ecologically extinct in the Caribbean because they come together to breed, and that's a very easy time to fish them. In Belize, the government of Belize over the last 30 years has protected all of the spawning aggregations of Nassau grouper. And in some places, such as Glover's Reef, we've quadrupled the spawning populations of Nassau grouper as a result of protecting them when they're spawning, and also more smartly managing the fisheries in the areas where we're not able to protect that species alone. So a significant bounce back of a species that we thought may go ecologically extinct throughout the Caribbean because of the tremendous value. And this again is taken at Glover's Reef. These are magnificent fish. These are some guards working in Gabon, in Africa, as a country in Central Africa, as I mentioned, the world's largest population of leatherback sea turtles. The government of Gabon, about 10 years ago, created a significant network of terrestrial protected areas to protect its terrestrial biodiversity. And just now, they're committing on the same side to create a large network of no-take marine reserves in the waters, to protect marine species, to protect fisheries, and to ensure larger protection for the overarching marine ecosystem in a country in Central Africa, which is unprecedented for Africa. So incredible hope for a place that has been generally under-prioritized. And now we get to Claudio Campagna and some of the work on the southern elephant seal in the Patagonia Sea. I think the story you'll hear from Claudio today and the understanding of these animals and the understanding of what can be done to restore oceans, not only in the US, but around the world, is really impressive and needs to be replicated in nearly every country. And so I will leave it to him to tell that story of success and continued possibility for expansion of caring for and protecting our oceans that is unprecedented.
Well, that image actually was helping me because this is being stretched like that, so the animal was looking a little bit larger. Yet elephant seals are 5 meters long, and that male was particularly big one, so it was helping me, but in the right direction. I'm going to talk about one place in the ocean, the Southwest Atlantic, of the way we call it the Patagonian Sea. You have to imagine an area the size of the Mediterranean Sea, more or less, 1.5 million, 2 million square kilometers. Most of these waters, the ones I'm specializing in, are part of the economic exclusive zone of Argentina. However, these waters were very well known in the 19th century because Darwin spent most of the voyage of the Beagle in that area, a couple of years at least. But today, the Argentines not necessarily understand it. Argentina is not a country that understands oceans as much as it understands tango and beef consumption. That's not a minor issue for somebody that wants to do ocean conservation, that requires people to understand what the ocean means and to put value into that. This is more or less the way the world sees the ocean. We just see the surface of the ocean. We don't have a very good understanding of what the ocean means. And we see the ocean very close to the coast. We understand the ocean up to here, basically. And then we don't understand much more. This is a kind of, I wonder, but this is a kind of idea that I would suggest most people have about the ocean. It's like a little bit of a combination of reality and mythology. It's a surrealist perspective of the ocean. And there are good reasons. If you look at some of the ocean creatures, they are very appropriate to create, to promote our imagination about creatures that do not exist. Have a look at this southern right whale, or at least at these South American sea lions, at these dolphins, mermaids. People were thinking about these animals like that, or monsters. It was not inappropriate. They were having that understanding. Just imagine 10,000 years ago, somebody walking along the coast of Peninsula Valdez in Argentina, seeing these kind of scenarios. People were having that perspective about the ocean, a perspective that combined a little bit of imagination with a little bit of reality. Then the scientists came, and we changed that perspective. But we started to see the ocean in a very cold way. Satellite pictures of productivity, of ocean temperature. We were capable of understanding where most ocean production was taking place. But we started to lose sight of that mythology, of that particular attachment that came from the heart, that caused fear, but also caused inspiration. I think that the conservationists is trying to bring together both worlds. And this is what we have been trying to do in Argentina. My work there is on elephant seals. I work on these big creatures. What I started to do is to observe the social behavior of these animals. You have the northern elephant seal very close by. I strongly suggest you to have a look at that. What we were doing most of the time is we were sitting there at the beach watching the behavior of these animals on the coast. But then in the mid-1980s, the technology was available to us to understand what these animals were doing when they were going to the ocean at sea. Let me spend a second just to...
I'll get it. Keep going.
Okay, what they were doing at sea. One thing that we did immediately is to put some recorders that were telling us about the diving behavior of elephant seals. And the people that were doing that work discovered that elephant seals can dive up to 1 mile underwater. And they can spend up to 2 hours without coming back to the surface. They are mammals. They have to come back to the surface to get air. And this was being discovered in the mid-1980s, really. With the northern elephant seal, here very close, by researchers from Año Nuevo, doing work in Año Nuevo from UC Santa Cruz. At the time that was being done, technology also allowed us to put instruments on elephant seals that told us where the animals were located in the ocean. I'm talking the early 1990s. And we discovered that these animals were not finding food very close, like 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 100 kilometers, but very far away. 1,000 miles, 2,000 miles off the coast. So all of a sudden, we were facing a completely new challenge. For us, protection at the time meant to do something while the animals were on the coast. to create protected areas to protect their reproductive sites. But elephant seals were spending 80% of the time in the faraway ocean, in the open ocean, in the deep ocean, in the international waters, places that were not protected at all. We scientists devoted to conservation do worry about these things, because we don't see the ocean like most people do when they just approach the coast for a vacation and they get all the beauty. We are sensitive to that, but unfortunately you have a special perspective that looks at the ocean with the problems that the ocean has. So when I'm in Patagonia and I see a magellanic penguin, of course I see the beauty of a magellanic penguin, but I have seen also many, many oiled magellanic penguins. So I want to do something. When I'm working on elephant seals, of course I love the social behavior that they have when they fight. I get very excited about that. But then I see all the animals that are being entangled because they get all this garbage in the ocean, and for some reason they just swim in and there are nets around their necks. So as conservationists, we have to face a reality that many people don't want. Is this what I think is an expression in English, is gloom and doom kind of situation? People say, okay, we want to avoid that. We want to avoid bad news. Unfortunately, we conservationists have to deal with that because we want to solve those problems. When we were learning what elephant seals were doing in the ocean, we conservationists want to protect the areas where they are. That means to protect the ocean. Imagine that the concept of a national park on land is already a very difficult concept. If you want to create a national park in the ocean, how do you start? Particularly considering that most people don't even understand the ocean beyond the knee. So we need to establish, it's a communication problem, we need to establish that concept in the international community. In my case, in the Argentine and Southern Cone community. And this is what we have been doing in the last 10 years. And I will be now telling you a little bit of a story about what the achievements were. First, we started, as I was telling you, to work on coastal issues. And we created a lot of coastal protected areas. A few years ago, the first coastal national park was created in Argentina. That was an achievement. And that was a result of long-term research being done along the entire coast of Argentina on many species, of publishing papers, publishing reports, giving talks, talking to the government. All of that together resulted in the first coastal national park of Argentina, and that's something to celebrate. Another thing that happened very recently is the creation of what's called an interjurisdictional park. That is a park that belongs partially to a province, the province of Chubut, and partially to the federal government, the national parks. They got together, they speak to each other, and they decided to create a protected area along the coast of Patagonia. That's a very positive result, a very, very encouraging result. And protected areas like those, there are many. There are about 40 along the coast of Patagonia. Some of them have been created in the 1980s with the work of the pioneer people that went there to explore. Now we are implementing more than exploring. And it's happening, it's taking place, it's taking momentum. It's a great time of history for that area of the world now, because many of the people that were trained to study these animals, I'll go back to that, many people that were trained to study these animals now have some power. Let me illustrate very quickly what I have said, because perhaps you'll get some better idea. It's better take-home messages if I go very quickly. Yeah. So I was here and I was saying, imagine you're walking here along the coast all of a sudden, and all of a sudden you see a killer whale stranding, trying to get sea lions. Wow. The other beauty is not just about individuals, it's about colonies. This is what you have in a temperate system. Lots of animals gathering together. Very important, because they are very vulnerable. They are very beautiful. Look at these black-browed albatrosses. They are reproducing in an island. I mean, I just have so many things to say. This is a colony of elephant seals where I work. But well, this is the way that scientists are looking at these animals, and this is another way. I wanted to show you this. This is the distribution of biodiversity. Don't pay too much attention to it, but what's telling you is that you don't find animals equally distributed in the ocean. There are some places that are really much worse than others in terms of protection, that require much more work, because either there are many more species, or some species are so unique that if you don't protect them there, they are not being protected. But this is the idea that I was telling you how I feel when I do conservation work. I feel that there is some threat all the time. When I see this animal, I think about that. It's not occurring at this place. It's not taking place, but it did occur in the past. When I see this animal, I also see this, because this is still occurring today. Okay, that's the image of a conservationist. We feel the weight of trying to support wildlife. And actually, we are quite happy to do that. One of the issues that we conservationists in the ocean have to deal is fisheries. Look at this boat. This boat uses all that light to fish squid. Look at this image. This is a photograph from a satellite. There's more light there than in the city of Buenos Aires almost. And this is about 1,000 miles long. We are worried about these kind of issues: entanglement, bycatch, garbage in the ocean. But we are many trying to solve those problems. And we are there in the field every day. One thing that we do is science, satellite tracking animal. This is one seal that I satellite tracked. Look at that. Left Peninsula Valdez, went to the Malvinas Falkland Islands, round the Cape, into the South Pacific, open oceans, to the fjords of Chile, and through the Magellan Channel back to Peninsula Valdez. This was a juvenile. Those are the kind of challenges that we face. We want to protect the ocean. We have to come up with solutions for animals that use the ocean like that. And there are many. It's not just the elephant seals. It's several species of penguins, turtles, etc. Look at what the dimensions they're using the ocean, in the order of the millions of square kilometers. That's why we have to think like that. Patagonia is not just important because of the resident species. This is an albatross that is reproducing in New Zealand. After reproduction, crosses the Pacific, spends some time in the coast, along the coast of Chile, and then goes round to the Patagonian Sea and spends the winter there, and after that goes around the world and back to the reproductive area. We put together, integrated all this information into an atlas that is accessible in the internet. Please have a look at this. It's www.atlas-marpatagonico.org. You'll see the distribution of 16 different species. And you'll find out how they compare to each other. And you can put maps there of productivity to understand why they're distributed like that. I was telling you, we have created protected areas. Let me give you a few examples. The examples I was telling you, they are coastal protected areas. But we are promoting open ocean protected areas. This is the new concept. Some of these open ocean protected areas do not need to be protected all year round. They could be temporarily protected when they are very productive. Others have to be protected in a way that move around, are not stable. It's not like the land. In the ocean, things move. So today you are protecting this, but this is moving with the currents. So in 3 months you are protecting this area. Those are the kinds of concepts that we are trying to establish in the scientific community, but also among the stakeholders that are using those resources. One of the very much open ocean, completely open ocean protected area that very recently was created is in this particular area called the Woodward Bank. This is like an island underwater. And the bottom of this bank is unique. There are lots of what we call endemic species, species that you just find there. And we protected a small portion of this, but it's a beginning, and it's a very positive one. I'm not going to expect that you understand this slide, of course, and it's not going to look great in YouTube, but there is one issue that I think you will understand. This is a group of fisheries that are called co-management fisheries. It's a paper published in Science or Nature recently. It's Nature. They did an evaluation, social scientists did an evaluation of what was important for these fisheries, why these fisheries were being successful, what made them sustainable. First variable that explains that is leadership. The leaders of those communities were capable of negotiating procedures, methodologies, approaches that made those fisheries sustainable. Very close to that is protected areas. Protected areas do work. Of course, you need will in the community, and this is what that's telling you. So in conservation, like in your field, leaders are critical. Individuals make the difference. And this is our leaders in the field in WCS, particularly in Patagonia. There are several, and we have been working there for almost half a century, 48 years since WCS started to have a project in Patagonia. I think that I want to leave you with that idea. There is hope. We are achieving results. We are facing huge problems. But we feel that communicating that well, we are going to convince people that there is another way of looking at the ocean that has not been the old one with all those myths, and is not only the one that scientists use, is one that people want, that combines knowledge with the heart. And this is what we are trying to transmit. Thank you very much. And this is the webpage I was telling you. Please search it.
So probably a number of questions for Claudio. We were asked to combine it all, and then we'll have a question answered in about 5 minutes between the two of us. So obviously, the creation of, as you saw there, almost 50 reserves along the coast of Argentina over those years is unprecedented in the world, and really congratulatory to Claudio and his team. I'm going to speak briefly about this opportunity that we've put together, and Winnie has really been working with us to identify a way how WCS that works in 60 countries around the world with thousands of staff in all these different places could work with Google. And one idea that came up was, well, we have a few permanent research stations. Research is really one component of conservation. It's certainly not the entirety, but there are some research stations that we have, and some of our ongoing research projects at places where we've worked at for 20 years or so can use some assistance in terms of monitoring, because it takes a lot of people power as well as thinking to monitor the state of the ecosystem. So this is an island in Belize, which WCS has owned for about 20 years. We don't do a lot of land purchase as an organization, but this is on Glover's Reef Atoll, which is one of the only atolls in the Atlantic Ocean. So a coral atoll is a ring island with no center. The center has subsided away, so it's only coral growth keeping it above the sea. In order to protect this place, which is one of the most important places in the Caribbean, which, if you remember the beginning, is one of the most important places in the entirety of the Atlantic Ocean, there needed to be a fisheries base there for patrols. And the fisheries department has to actively be out there and regulating the fishery. As a result, almost a third of the atoll is fully protected, and the rest of it is extremely well managed fishery, uncommon for the rest of the Mesoamerican Barrier Reef. So the fisheries department has a small base here that they use for free with us, and then we have our research station where we have about 20 bunks. And I guess part of this is to be very clear what type of accommodations we have there. Basically, 20 field bunks for staff for visiting scientists, student groups, and people that come through and assist us with our research work. So this is just a photo of the island, and of course we do a lot of work on all the different aspects of the place. We monitor coral reef annually, spiny lobsters, which is the critical commercial fishery interest, conch, several species of grouper. We have a long-term shark monitoring program. Interestingly, the shark at Glover's Reef is one of the only populations in the whole Mesoamerican Barrier Reef that has been stable over the last 20 years, whereas the rest of the areas has started to go down. So all that monitoring has shown and been able to inform the success of our work, but also help us adaptively manage as time goes on. So in thinking through with Winnie as a way we might be able to work together, we have a sea turtle monitoring project that happens annually. It's coordinated with the fisheries department. All of our work in Belize and in all the countries where we work is done in coordination with the management authority. And so at the end of April, we'll be going out and require and need people to help us run some transects to monitor the entirety of the atoll for its resident sea turtle population. So it turns out that we came to Glover's Reef because of its robust biodiversity in terms of coral reef and the fish populations were very healthy. Some of our sea turtle researchers, similar to folks to Claudio, leaders in their field, came in and did some work and identified that this was critical habitat for a lot of juvenile turtles. So for the last 4 years, we've been running transects on an annual basis to identify and start monitoring that population. Certainly not for 25 years, the way Claudio has with elephant seals in Argentina, but we're just starting to determine the relative importance of the place. So it's a great opportunity to participate. It's certainly not a vacation in that we need the help, and we're not an ecotourism outfit. We're a research and conservation organization. So it's for anyone that is interested in signing up or learning more about it. It is absolutely going to be some work that you'll be doing, and we need to be clear about that. Otherwise, expectations will be very, very far. What we'll be structuring the day like for folks is half the day. We only have 8 slots, so we only have ability to. Though the station can take more people, we can only actively employ 8 people to be working on this, and we don't want to have a lot of people sitting around. So one half of the day will be participating in the transect, the line monitoring for sea turtles. The other half of the day will be to recoup, actually maybe enjoy a little bit of the island. And this is one island on the large atoll, so there's several actual tourism outfits in other parts of the island that we will be able to find ways for people to have some time off in. It will be 6 days that you'll be out here on the island, and then if you decide to if you do decide to sign up and have some interest in this, and decide you want to see more of the country of Belize, because there's fantastic rainforest, jaguar reserves, that would be on your own to stay longer and arrange as well. Our team, we have a boat that will take you out to the atoll, so about 40 miles off the coast of Belize, and then we'll take you back at the end as well. So it's we don't have a lot of opportunities like this. We're not an organization that this is not part of our model of conservation. It's just this happened. Winnie was great we threw around probably 20 different ways we might be able to work together. This talk today was one of them, and another was this trip, which Winnie's been fantastic about trying to find a way for us to work together. And so happy to answer questions about that, questions about what you might see in Belize. And then Claudio's here all the way from Argentina as well. So I hope there might be a few questions about the fantastic work that they've been doing there. Thank you very much for your time. It's really great to have this opportunity. We really appreciate it. So some people said if you have questions, if you don't mind using the microphone so people can hear you, or you could, I guess, decide you don't want to be on the microphone.
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to hear if you guys could tell me more about exactly what kind of work, what would the day actually look like, what would the first half of the day look like?
So the time that you'll be spending, because you'll be split in groups of 4, so the time that you'll be spending on transect, you'll be out in a boat and swimming, so snorkeling, not scuba diving. That would bring in a whole other set of complications. Snorkeling, and we do linear transect swimming for identifying any of the sea turtle species that are there. So we have greens and hawksbill, and sometimes several other species that come through, but greens and hawksbill are the primary. So it would be about, from when you leave the dock, our pier here, it'll be about 4 hours out to the survey site that we choose for that day, because it's a random selection of sites throughout the atoll. There's there's very much statistical significance because it's been designed by our ecologists. Then you'd be swimming transects for several hours, moving around a few times. We do catch the turtles, and you're not required, because it is a physically difficult thing to catch the turtles, but we do catch them, and if you do, we will tag them, and we will have several, 1 if not 2 satellite tags that we're hoping to put on if we get the appropriately aged turtle. So afterwards you'll be able to follow. There's a website called seaturtle.org, which for free allows you to monitor turtles. So hopefully, if things all go well, we will have one that we can tag with a satellite receiver and be able to track after the trip. Then you'll come home. So you either have just had breakfast, be out for up to 4 hours, come home for lunch, and then the afternoon would be yours. There is not extremely high-speed Wi-Fi, but there is some Wi-Fi. I wouldn't expect anyone that does a lot of modeling or anything like that would be able to do that through the internet, but you would have some communication. That part of the day would be a bit of a break. We've got a great Belizean. Our whole team you're going to be working with is a Belizean team. Our team leader, Robin Coleman's a PhD ecologist from Belize and a champion for conservation there. And a whole set of the Belizean fishery staff will be with you. And we have about 5 permanent staff at the station who will be serving you food, maybe as good as we ate today at Google. I don't know. Those of you who go can tell us. But great, solid Belizean food to make sure that you don't waste away when you're out there. Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Yeah.
So you mentioned that Argentina is more about salsa and beef than the ocean.
Tango.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
But that this new preserve had been created in the southern part of the ocean. Do you perceive that there's a sea change going on, that the people, the leadership are becoming more aware and
very much
accelerating?
The head of the national parks of Argentina today, Patricia Gandini, is a person that understands the ocean. She has been working with WCS for a long time. She has a PhD doing work on penguins, and she has been facilitating the process of creating not just a national park, but many the interjurisdictional area. And I think that that makes a difference. Leadership, again, she understands that. Patricia's boss actually is the Minister of Tourism of Argentina, and he understands protected areas very, very much. And I think that we have some political will there that is aligned and is very important. In Peninsula Valdez, which is one of the most beautiful places along the coast of Patagonia, the person in charge of the Peninsula Valdez, Alicia Tagliorete, who is the Secretary of Tourism, is a conservationist and is part of an NGO that I helped create with her and other WCS people. So things are happening because the individuals are now in the right positions to make things happen. And the Argentines are very sensitive. If the sooner they are being informed about an issue, they respond. They don't want the penguins to be killed. They don't want the penguins to be oiled. They worry. So I think it's a community that historically has not been very much trained to watch the ocean, but is very easily trained.
One more question. It's kind of a softball, but what, beyond coming and counting turtles, what can we, as people who care about the ocean, do to affect change around the world and save the biodiversity of the oceans?
Right. You can help the NGOs that are doing ocean conservation. Now, this is more than that. It's much more. There are many, many things that you could do. First of all, you're a consumer of ocean products. Even if you don't want, you are in some ways or another. Be a responsible consumer. Be aware that many fisheries are not sustainable and that many species should not be consumed. It's very easy to find Chilean sea bass here, and you have to be aware of that. It's very easy to find shrimp in any cocktail. You should be careful about that because shrimp causes a very high bycatch. In some places of the world, 1 pound of shrimp, 1 kilo of shrimp results in 10 kilos of diversity that is being thrown away because it has no commercial value. So as a consumer, you could really, really do a lot. You could also spread the word. You have seen the finning problem, shark problem. The world does not necessarily know much about that. You're educated people, you know that, but many people don't. Be sure that you talk. You integrate conservation in your everyday discourse. You are in a, as Kelly was saying today, this is a concept of a modern castle. It's a castle it's an intellectual paradise that is a communication paradise. Make sure that the world knows that there is an ocean there and that the ocean requires our support. Many people of the world believe that the ocean is inexhaustible, cannot be used up. That's a wrong perception. We need to change that. You could help develop technological tools. For example, to map areas or to analyze, to do spatial analysis, zoning. So you can contribute with the technical aspects of it. You can educate your children, your friends. That's extraordinarily important. You could be part of some of our expeditions and some of our work. Get involved in really obtaining the information.
I should add that on the Google Oceans layer that Google has supported, Claudio's site is one of the first participants in providing profiles. So there has been ways that we've worked together as well.
And today I just was coming in and we all of a sudden say, oh, but that's Cousteau and that's Sylvia Earle. So the community of Google is sensitive to the ocean. I was very gladly surprised.
Great.
And of course, Google Marine could change the world in the way we see the ocean.
Great. Any other questions? Yeah.
Oh.
I was wondering how you decide how much of your effort to put on protecting the deep sea versus the coastline.
Most of my life I dedicated to doing work that was helpful for coastal protection. This is what I did. And today WCS in Argentina is still doing that. And in the Southern Cone, because we also work in Chile very much, there are some areas of Chile that are extraordinary as coastal areas. The fjords of Chile are unique. You don't find those places any other place of the world. So many people, most of the effort that we put there is about coastal conservation, still today, and it is required. A proportion of us had the courage to move away from that specific need into another perspective that for which we did not have a big market. People were understanding that the coasts have to be protected because you see the coast. But no, you don't see the ocean, and you don't see the depth, the deep ocean. I have been leading what is called the Sea and Sky project. The name is suggesting that the way I think is about the ocean and the sky. I do think about the coast, of course, but I'm trying to promote this idea of the deep ocean protection around the ocean protection. For me, is most of the work that I do. For the organization, is a proportion of the work that we do. The open ocean has many problems, as you might know. One is jurisdictional. Countries have a decision on the first 200 miles. And there, they could determine who is coming, who is leaving, what is being done. Beyond the 200 miles is the commons. Everybody owns it. There are some laws, but it's very difficult to enforce what's going on. And fisheries today are moving into that realm. They are moving into the international waters. There are a group of people, and we are part of that, alliances of organizations that are trying to understand what can be done to protect the international waters. And a few things are being done, and a few places must be protected. For example, the seamounts. The seamounts are places deep in the ocean that are unique, because you have a flat ocean and all of a sudden you have something like that. And that creates particular, very sensitive places where you have a biodiversity that is only there. Those seamounts are being fished. So we need to protect them. And there is a strong effort into trying to do that, because we don't even know the species that are there. So as an answer is, most of the work still requires to be done along the coast. Yeah. That's a must. But a few of us, it's sustainable if a proportion of us will move into the more challenging, more experimental phases. But those experimental phases have to be turned into not that experimental, but into something more tangible very soon. Otherwise, it's very easy to destroy a small environment like a seamount. Did it answer?
Great. Any other questions? Give a follow-up, go ahead.
Unrelated question.
Yeah.
Is the trip restricted to Google employees, or what about qualified friends?
For the moment, if you sign up, it's restricted to Google employees, just because I think currently from understanding of demand, we have more than 8 from Google, so we'd like to keep it that way. But if you are signing up and would like to make a note that if it doesn't fill up, we'd like to bring someone as well, we can open up that question if it's possible.
Of course, we will come partner. I mean, we want to bring your
She's the boss, so yes, there you go. I should say, because I noticed a couple people are leaving, we're happy to stay till the end of the hour for questions. But if it's not apparent, I think it'll be apparent that if you'd like to sign up, please go to that address. And I think on this email for the talk today, you saw there's an address to sign up. And we're taking applications or your expressions of interest until Monday, and then we're going to make decisions, because I know people need to plan their personal lives, because this is the last week in April. So if you're interested, please, before on the Glover's Reef trip, please sign up and put all your information in to that address by Monday. So we have a couple more minutes for. Is there anything I'm missing just from folks? Okay. So we have 2 more minutes for people, and then we'll take casual questions after.
Let me just say one thing more about your question about what you could do. Let's be in touch. Let's talk, because there are some things that people have to understand what they want to do.
Yeah.
And we can help guide that.
Great.
So I just gave you a general understanding, but if you want to talk about that, I'm very open to discuss that with you.
Okay.
And
Go ahead.
everybody. Yeah.
Is the political tension between Argentina and Falkland Islands proving to be challenging, or do people find ways to work around?
It is, yes. I mean, the war between the UK and Argentina in 1982 was unfortunate. Is a problem that you can analyze from many different perspectives. Certainly, the political perspective is not my place to analyze that problem. I could speak as an individual, but from a conservation perspective, it is a pity that happened. Because now all of a sudden, one ocean is being seen from many different perspectives, and that does not help, because the ocean does not work like that. So countries have to make decisions at the regional level, and at a very large level. That problem is creating some issues, some dialogue has been interrupted. And now there are some developments that are taking place in the islands that Argentines don't decide about. And that's causing clearly tension. I had the hope, and I have it, that perhaps the conservation perspective has an umbrella that embraces that problem and puts that in perspective. But we need time. And yes, it has been a problem. And for us, it's a challenge to think in the open ocean, considering that situation, that jurisdictional issue.
Great. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks to Winnie for being our host. We really appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you each individually or afterwards. And thank you from WCS to Google, and look forward to working together.